What's up, everyone? It's Alex from Sandro Says here. Happy Halloween. We are officially 3 weeks away from Halloween itself. That means it's time for my first episode in my Halloween series retrospective. Tonight, we are going over the Blumhouse Trilogy.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Yes, sir. Nice seeing you, sir.
To start, I think we need to go back to the beginning. And by the beginning, I actually mean 2009. 2009 was when Halloween 2 came out, and I mean the second Halloween 2. This was Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Rob Zombie was given the reins to the franchise in 2007 by the Weinsteins because things had kind of fizzled out in the original timeline. They did, I believe, 6 or 7 or 8 movies in the original timeline, although even that timeline was split up. They said, let's start fresh. Let's give it to this cool, hip, young director who does music videos and did House of a Thousand Corpses. I personally didn't love the first Rob Zombie Halloween, and I hated the second one. So after the second one, when there were rumors coming out that there was going to be a third Rob Zombie Halloween, I was a little apprehensive. Couple that with the fact that at the time, everything was going 3D, and that's exactly what Halloween 3 was supposed to be, Halloween 3D. A couple years went by, we didn't hear any news, and all of a sudden it seemed like Rob Zombie was done with the project and things might be moving in a different direction. That's when we heard some other directors, some other themes, some other concepts. Was it going to be a full reboot? Was there going to be a TV show? What was going to happen? Halloween ended up in production hell, which is kind of ironic considering Michael Myers. So it was 9 years from Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 to Halloween 2018. That's the longest layoff in the series' history. Before that, I believe only 6 years had gone by between movies. So that was pretty wild. Out of nowhere, Blumhouse decides to, I guess they bought the picture or they bought the rights to it. I don't know exactly what was going on. I don't know the order of events, if David Gordon Green and Danny McBride had an idea and went to John Carpenter, or if Blumhouse bought the rights first. Whatever happened. Basically, Blumhouse was a regular, run-of-the-mill production company in the early 2000s. Then all of a sudden, they got a niche for horror. They were famous for some horror movies such as Paranormal Activity, The Purge, Insidious, Sinister. So they were kind of like the modern horror producers at this point. Horror had gone into a weird spot after Scream. It was a lot of remakes, a lot of requels, a lot of prequels, and things were stale. I was familiar with Blumhouse from 2 movies in particular, The Belko Experiment and Happy Death Day. I thought both those movies were awesome. They both had great senses of humor, but also a lot of realism, a lot of not gore, but horrific moments and thoughts in them. So it was pretty badass. I was excited to see Blumhouse involved. I was definitely apprehensive when I heard that David Gordon Green and Danny McBride were going to be at the helm. Basically, they were more known for comedy at that point. Danny McBride especially. Most people knew him from Pineapple Express, things like that. So the movie, immediately we said, was this going to be just like a movie with dick jokes? Like, what's going to happen to Halloween here? Eventually, they started doing interviews, and things sounded really good, actually, to us long-term fans. David Gordon Green was saying such things as, we want to bring this back to the original version of The Shape. We want to make him scary again. We don't want to make him supernatural. So that was interesting, and John Carpenter supposedly gave his blessing, which he's basically stayed out of the series since 1981. So that was all pretty cool. Having said all that, now we start the journey. Halloween 2018. Now, it's important for me to note, throughout this entire retrospective series, I am going to be very specific about my criticisms. I am not going to criticize people's decisions, rather their motivations or their change of characters over the course of the trilogy. The reason I'm not going to criticize decisions is because these are movies. These are specifically horror movies. These characters are meant to make bad decisions. They have to do things that regular people wouldn't do in their position because that puts them in danger and that keeps the movie going along. It might be an interesting concept someday to have a horror movie where the killer just ends up waiting in a closet for 2 hours because the people don't go into the scary house. I don't know. Maybe I'll get that directed. Anyway, that's what we're dealing with. So I'm just going to put that out there when I'm getting into these. It's going to be the same for all the movies. I'm going to do my best to not say, why did that person go into the house? It made no sense. Okay, right off the start, Halloween 2018. Here's what I loved about the movie. The atmosphere is phenomenal. Right off the bat, it's a eerie, off-putting setting. Something is weird in this whole get-up. There's the podcasters, they immediately go to the asylum. There's crazy people everywhere. Michael is standing off. All the other inmates seem to know that something is definitely off about him. The music crescendos at the right point when the podcaster's holding the mask out saying "speak." It really kicks the movie off in a great way. I think that the music in general in the first movie is dominant. A lot of the old cues are there. A lot of the great scenes, like when Michael Myers first puts his mask back on after killing the podcasting couple. The slow piano version of the theme is great. I like when he goes into the Halloween setting at nighttime with all the kids trick-or-treating. And there's a more subdued version of the theme as he stalks and then goes on the long one shot where he grabs the hammer and kills the old lady and all that stuff. I love the music when, I forget the guy's name, is it Arthur? Or the guy who tries to hit on Allison and fails in the backyard. Basically, when he gets stuck on the wrought iron fence and then the shape chases Allison, there's two pieces of music back to back that are phenomenal. I think they're actually called Wrought Iron Fence and The Shape Chases Allison. Either way, John Carpenter and his son Cody did a phenomenal job with the music here. The music puts you in the right setting the entire time. Jamie Lee Curtis is back. She has dabbled in the series on and off over time. She seems to enjoy being part of Halloween when she wants to be, which is fine. She can do whatever she wants. She's a famous actress. I enjoy that. I don't enjoy, but I don't necessarily understand, which we'll get into more when I talk about the sequels. I don't understand her point of view and why she's acting the way she does, and why she is so protective and so cautious over 40 years. But I think Jamie Lee Curtis did a great job of showing someone with some type of panic disorder or trauma and just trying to deal with that. So she did a phenomenal job in this first movie. I like James Jude Courtney as the Shape. He was a menacing presence. The way he moved, the way he flowed. I remember when they were talking about Halloween 5 and they said the director wanted the Shape to flow like wood through water. It actually makes sense in this movie. I think James Jude Courtney is effectively menacing, but at the same time ghostly, which is crazy. So Hawkins fits right in. Detective Hawkins or Officer Hawkins or Sergeant Hawkins, whatever he is. Will Patton, classic actor, you might know him from Armageddon. He's one of the sheriffs in this town. He seemed he was around the night that Mike. He was a young guy on the force, a rookie on the force the night Michael was captured. He has some history with Laurie, and he seems to be one of the only people in town that's fully aware of what's going on. Him and Laurie are the only ones that are really truly scared of Michael. I was really hoping more from the sheriff. I don't actually remember his name right now. I think it's Sheriff Barker, actually. They built him up in the first movie, and it seemed like he was going to have more to do. And in the second movie, they kind of work him in a little bit, but it's not that great. We'll get more into him in the sequel, Halloween Kills. Karen and Ray are the most unrealistic couple in history. I really love Toby Huss as Ray. His comedy is great. I think his death scene is great. Karen, there's no universe I can believe that they would end up together, because she seems like the antithesis of fun. So I understand her upbringing affected her and all that stuff, but it's just, I don't think it's something that they would end up together. So Allison was fun. Allison was a great addition. Her friends are great. I really liked her one friend. I forget the babysitter that got killed. She was probably one of the more compelling characters, and it's sad that she died so soon. But either way, Allison was a great character. I thought she was really interesting in the first movie, how she was trying to balance being a daughter to her mother and a granddaughter to her grandmother, trying to be a link between them to try to get them back on good terms, trying to navigate high school life, and then realizing that maybe grandmother's not as crazy as everyone thought she was. So I don't have too much to say about the other characters at the moment, because most of the other characters get more developed in the sequels. So I'll leave that for them. The best scenes of Halloween 2018, by far. I probably have the most to say about Halloween 2018, because of the three, I liked it the most. Best scenes, the gas station attack. The gas station attack melds a couple scenes. It melds like Halloween 4, H2O, a couple of the more terrifying scenes in the series, and it really does a good job. The music hits it. The hits are brutal. The way that he beats up the male podcaster, the way the female podcaster is terrorized. It's just the way he puts the teeth over the thing. It's like, oh God. So again, Michael is toying with his victims, which you see later on when he kills Vicky. That's her name. I remembered it now. When he kills Vicky and puts the sheet over her, he's clearly back to having fun like he used to, which is interesting. And the attack at the house. The attack at the house at the end is a great way to end the movie. I think, I know they were planning on doing sequels from the get-go, but the fact that they ended it in such a interesting way where Michael was defeated, but then, oh my god, he disappeared, what's going on here? It was a great way to end this particular movie. Plus the actual battle where he's stalking Laurie, then Laurie pulls the fake out and disappears. I thought it was good. It was all around an exciting ending. Here's where things fall apart in the movie a little bit for me. The main criticism myself and many people have. Dr. Sartain. The minute he puts on the Michael mask, they feel different. It's like, oh wow, this is a moment I was not hoping for in this movie. I thought we were going other places here. Him wanting to drive them together is fine, but the minute he put the mask on and he pops up in front of the hood of the car, it's just ridiculous. It looks like a little kid wearing the mask. It looks as silly as in Halloween 2007, the Rob Zombie one, when the little kid is wearing the mask. And at this point, if the movie is insisting on keeping Laurie Strode as a character around, but they don't want them to be brother and sister, but they have to find a way to jam them together, what makes more sense, them being brother and sister, or outside factors forcing them together? I don't really know. I don't know what I like or don't like at this point as far as the brother and sister storyline, because we were hammered home that they're not brother and sister, but then they spend this entire trilogy, thinking about each other or whatever. So it's strange. We see that Michael does seemingly recognize her when he's standing in the house and she's in the street and fires the revolver at him. He seems to recognize her and know something. So that's interesting. I don't know if that's meant to be or that was just a little nod at the time, because it's not James Jude Courtney. That's Nick Castle, I believe, acting at that moment. So who knows? I think it's great. I really enjoyed Halloween 2018. I don't really want to give ratings here, but of the trilogy, this was a great place to start. And now we get into Halloween Kills, which was where things went in a different direction. So leading into Halloween Kills, I think it had a lot of great things going for it. I really loved the 1978 intro. I loved some of the scenes where Michael's actually fighting people and being brutal. It's definitely meant to be a more vicious, more bloody, more gory, more whatever movie than the first one, so I love that. But there's a lot of fluff here that drags the movie down. So let's get into it. So I'll start with the stuff I like. Like I said, the 1978 scene is fantastic. Michael, they really matched the setting, the way the film grain looked, the way that Michael looked, and the way we got to see him come out of that corner with the rope and such quickness, that was really like, oh my god, that's something I want to see more of. Do more of the 1978 version where he just kept being free that night and wasn't captured. So that was pretty cool. I really liked the 1978 scene. Loved the scene with the firemen, as ridiculous as it is, with firemen, trying to fight him off with a hose. I know that hose is very powerful and could hurt a normal man, but when someone's coming at you with that Halligan tool, you would probably turn around and run. You wouldn't hold the hose. Brutal scene. Amazing that he's just laying waste to everyone. So it's still very believable at this point also. I mean, he got locked in the basement. I believe he was shot in the arm, but not shot in a definitive way in the first movie. And then he was left in the basement for dead, but he was able to basically save himself from that by hiding in the gun closet. So Michael versus the people in the car versus it's Marion Chambers, the couple, the doctor and the nurse, and going blank, who else? What's her name? Lindsay Wallace. It's all right, but I can't. As much as I love the scene for how it builds up and how each person kind of has their own individualized death, they're all kind of comedic. And I don't really love a scene where people are lined up and just handed to Michael on a platter. Michael Myers, the Halloween series, is at its best when he's stalking, when he's in the shadows, when you don't know what's going on. Him just becoming a Jason figure or someone just ripping through a car of people. It was cool to see, but personally, I don't think that's what Michael Myers is. So it was, as much as it was fun to see, I think it was one of those things that's like, yeah, we could have done something better here, I think, for these people. Not that they should have investigated a haunted house or something, but maybe they all go into that park at night and they get picked off one by one instead of sitting in a car. It would have been just a little bit more interesting. All right, cool. Sorry, I took copious notes. I really wanted to make this as best as I could. Michael walking without his mask. I thought that was badass. Karen, I really didn't like her for the 2 movies she was in, but I liked the scene where she picked up the mask and he basically chased her. I don't know why she gave it back to him at the end. She figures she would have kept it. But again, I don't want to criticize decisions. It's just the motivation there is weird. Like, you leave it as a trap, but he would have still been walking that way anyway. Either way, it was eerie to see him without the mask. They filmed it amazing. You don't really get full glimpses of his face. You see the damage he's taken, but it just looks gnarly. Whatever's going on under his mask looks painful. So that's pretty awesome. And now for the section why I like to call "Why Did This Go Nowhere?" What was up with the window staring? They made a big deal that, oh, Michael stares out his sister's window. He stares at Haddonfield. He sees this radio tower, potentially. That went absolutely nowhere. At the end, basically, he kills Karen there. That's okay. Then they demolish his house, but they never really established what he was looking at. It was something they threw in and were like, yeah, maybe this is a cool plot thread that we'll get to eventually, and they never got to it. Why were the Mulaney's featured? They made them such a prominent group of kids at the beginning. You figured they were going to have some comeuppance with Michael in this movie, or with Lonnie, with something. You only get the Mulaney's to come back in the 3rd movie, and at that point, you don't know if it's one of the Mulaney's you saw originally. So it's just a general antagonist. It's not like, and I'll get into that when I talk about the 3rd movie, but I just didn't understand why they made the Mulaney's seem like, oh man, it's going to be some new family in town. But basically it amounts to Haddonfield has their own version of the O'Doyle family from Billy Madison. And that's okay, cool, I guess. All right, it doesn't really matter. I don't really think we needed to include Lonnie Elam. I know it was a name that they mentioned back in 78, and that's what movies do nowadays. They take someone who was off screen or was on screen for 2 seconds or was a background character and say, hey, let's make them a featured character now because people will go nuts. It would almost be just as interesting to have a new character in town. Maybe the sheriff even could have been Lonnie Elam in this instead of Sheriff Barker, instead of Lonnie Elam himself. I know they wanted to make a connection. Oh, Lonnie sold peyote, or maybe Ray sold peyote to Lonnie. I don't know. It was almost unnecessary. Where these movies get too tied down with member berries of, oh, we need to bring each of these characters back. Would Tommy Doyle have been that crazy? He didn't. I think he maybe saw one of the dead bodies, maybe 2 in the original Halloween, or maybe just one of the dead bodies. I don't even know if he saw any, to be honest. They ran down the street and were screamed for help. I don't know if a kid would be that traumatized. I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry to say that in a weird way. Traumatized, yes, but he basically became a militant, insane person from like 7 years old and kept it for 40 years. So it just didn't sit right with me. I didn't understand that. To me, people that were this disturbed, like Lonnie, or excuse me, possibly like Lonnie, I know they all wanted to stay in town, but I know people who left town for way less. So that's just, I don't get the motivation behind why they all had to stay in Haddonfield. So the Tivoli subplot, I thought it was actually kind of interesting at first, where it's like, oh, there's more insane people. Sorry to say that. There's more asylum escapees out and about. Oh, are they causing trouble? What else? Are they going to be false flags for Michael? Turns out Tivoli was just looking for help, just wandering to the hospital as best he could. And people mistook him for Michael Myers, which leads me to another thing that doesn't really sit well with me. Not only the Tivoli subplot going not nowhere, but they really just wanted to use him to show that the town was now being turned into evil, worse than Michael, perhaps. But the whole thing that bothered me with the Tivoli subplot was... going blank now. What was I about to say? The whole thing that bothered me with the Tivoli subplot is that I don't understand why there would be this much of a riot at the hospital. At this point, only a few people have died, much like in 1978. It's a small number of deaths, and I can't imagine word traveled that fast in this town. For the hospital to be overrun with people on the verge of a riot no less, it just seemed a little forced to make this the center of town and let's have everyone there so we can have a mob mentality. It is what it is, but it didn't make sense to me that this mob would come out of nowhere. It almost would have mattered more if a small group of people attacked Tivoli and like beat him to death or something, thinking he was Michael, rather than a mob of hundreds, because then it makes no one really guilty for it. So it took away a lot of the impact, in my opinion. And then the ending scene. We were told many times that Michael Myers would not be supernatural. And that's how it happens in this last scene. Michael Myers is 100% supernatural at this point. In the first movie, he took a couple bullets from Dr. Loomis, perhaps 6, perhaps 7, perhaps 5, who knows. By this point, he took bullets, knives, lost his hand, took bullets earlier in that same night, was in a fire. For them to say that he's a natural or a normal man that can do almost supernatural things gets a bit offensive. And just to set this up for why myself and some other fans were so bothered, I'm going to read quotes from David Gordon Green, Danny McBride, and John Carpenter from early in the series, or even before 2018 came out, explaining how they were going to handle the aspects that were introduced later in the other movies, later down the timeline of the previous movies. Okay, here's a quote from John Carpenter. Carpenter describes Michael Myers as a force of nature. He's supposed to be almost supernatural. Here's Danny McBride on the subject. I think we're trying to take it back to what was so good about the original. It was just very simple and just achieved that level of horror that wasn't turning Michael Myers into something that can't be killed. I want to be scared by something that I really think could happen. I think it's much more horrifying to be scared by someone standing in the shadows while you're taking the trash out. And then here's a couple by David Gordon Green. From our early days in film school, we always loved Halloween because of its lack of supernatural, you know? It felt like it could happen anywhere, any town, anytime. Referencing his previous movie, Stranger. A lot of Stranger dealt with randomness of violence, and in a way, that was a horror film, so it wasn't such a huge narrative leap. In some ways, that project informed our approach to Michael Myers' narrative drive. What's scary in the real world is what you don't know, and random acts of violence get under my skin rather than something that is motivated or supernatural. Possibly my favorite quote. I don't think he does anything that's supernatural. I just think he does things that are spectacular and resilient. That quote flies in the face of the last scene of the movie. So, that's basically Halloween Kills. An uneven event. Almost seemed like the end of Michael. But then he escapes into the darkness, and then we don't know what happens. Oh wait, we do know what happens, and it's not that compelling. This is kind of a Halloween movie, I guess. Michael Myers doesn't appear for, I think, 40 minutes in this movie. I don't mind the Corey Cunningham storyline, not at all. I'm not like most people who says, oh my god, that makes it not a Halloween movie. Not at all. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's actually a scary concept and could be a great movie on its own. The problem is whether you try to wedge Michael Myers in, you make them like a buddy cop, you make the transfer of powers, you do certain things like that that really turn people off. Because again, this is not supposed to be a supernatural character. So right off the bat, I think Corey was a really intriguing character, but he's dropped in seemingly out of a helicopter in the third movie. Why did we not see Corey before this? Why wasn't he established? We established the Mulaney's and all these other people. Why couldn't we establish Corey Cunningham? Would have been way better. The biggest problem I think I have overall with the third movie is the insane change in Laurie's psyche. She goes from 40 years of battening down the hatches, getting guns, building safety zones and traps and all this crap, security systems in her house, for one night after a couple of her friends were killed. 2 of her friends were killed, a couple people in town, I'm not saying it doesn't affect her and it's not a big deal, but when you compare it to Halloween 2018 when her daughter's husband, they're both killed, which irrevocably changes her granddaughter and her life. Half the town is seemingly murdered, including Tommy Doyle, someone who she's been friends with for 40 years. So all this happens. And Laurie, by the third movie, is like, well, hey, I finally decided to get over it. That doesn't make sense. You wouldn't have spent 40 years not getting over it. And then with him in jail, or with him in an asylum, and then all of a sudden when he's free and just killed your daughter and wandered off, now you're going to get over it and start making jokes about ripping your top off and all this stuff. Like, it didn't seem like Laurie Strode anymore. And they tried to bring her back toward the end of the movie once she started seeing Corey was turning into Michael and all that. But at that point, it was lost. I just didn't care anymore. I was disinterested in this movie from a couple points. From that point, Michael, his whole idea, apparently they decided in the second movie that his whole idea was to go home. Well, they demolished his home. So now where is he going to go? I guess he's going to sit in the sewer and eat rats. That's it. That's his plan. That's just what Michael Myers is going to do from now on. It's the Halloween resurrection Michael Myers. He's just going to sit in the sewer and eat rats. That's his plan. I don't get that. Very sad. I don't know why this Mulaney was shoved in. Like I said, it was weird to have a Mulaney shoved into this movie when you didn't really. You could have just had a general antagonist. You didn't have to have the thing with. I don't know. I feel like they started so many threads in these movies that really didn't go anywhere. So, does Michael Myers power up from killing people if he's not supernatural? Because if not, why does he power up seemingly when he kills the Mulaney when Corey helps him kill the Mulaney in the sewer? As he kills him, he starts doing this weird like as if he's getting like blood power or something. It looks a little ridiculous, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Especially if, again, we're trying to establish that this is a real man who's close to 70 years old at this point. So, why is there a face morphed into the wall? Did anyone else see that? I don't know what that's about. I'm going to show a picture of it here and make sure we can all get a good look at it. I have no idea what that's about. Was that Michael's face? Did he sleep against that wall? Did he slam someone's face into the wall? I don't know. I tried sitting through this movie twice for these reviews, and I couldn't do it. I skipped around to some parts that I thought were semi-interesting, and I just couldn't. I think David Gordon Green and Danny McBride tried to outsmart everyone by making this third installment what people didn't expect. Was something outside the box. Let's make it like Halloween 3. Let's, make a different antagonist. Let's just be a little smarter than everyone in the room. And that's not what people wanted. They wanted a conclusion to the story that had started. Originally, the plans were apparently to make Halloween 3 also take place, or Halloween Kills Where Ends, take place as the same night as the second movie, which took place as the same night as the first movie. That would have been interesting. But as it is, I don't. It's a really uneven series. I'll go back to 2018 and revisit that almost every year. I'll go back to Kills maybe and watch a couple scenes. I will never go back to Ends. That's just how I feel. It's sad. I thought we were going to build towards a great trilogy, and it didn't work. I think one of the big problems is that they keep telling us it's not about Laurie and Michael being related, but it's about Laurie and Michael. So does it matter if they're related or not at that point? What is that? If we're so worried about taking away his motivations of killing his sister, then we should be worried about taking away his abilities to take gunshot wounds and stab wounds to the chest and all that, being lit on fire and all those things. So, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my retrospective on the Blumhouse on the Blumhouse Halloween Trilogy, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of the movies, what you thought of my thoughts, what you disagree with. Maybe let's have a talk. I really appreciate your support, and I will be back next week. Next week we are covering, dun dun dun, the Thorn Trilogy. And you might be surprised with my thoughts. I actually like some of the movies that people don't like, and I don't like one of the ones that people really love. Tune in next week, October 17th, for that episode, and I'll see you later. Have a good one.